morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I would also like to say bonjour and then salam. I think that's how you say it in Morocco. I beg your pardon, in Ethiopia, right? Excellent. Thank you for having us. Yesterday, we started by, asking a system level question because, of course, in a system, we have the key players and then, of course, the feedback loop and what's not. And so yesterday we captured the big picture of autonomy-driven internationalization, and we captured the strategic autonomy, we captured the institutional autonomy, we also captured the curricular autonomy, and of course as well, data partnership and digitalization autonomy. But today we're going to delve into one of them, and that is the curricular autonomy. And I would also like to start with something that may feel uncomfortable, a question that may feel uncomfortable, because you know why? The most important conversations usually start with uncomfortable questions, okay? And so that's what we're going to start with today. And that provocation this morning is the question about who owns your curriculum, right? A degree is not just a credential. Think about it this way. A degree actually says, I have been trained in a body of knowledge. I have been assessed by setting set standards, and I have been found competent by someone according to something. So a credential is actually an epistemological declaration where you're saying, this is the knowledge that I believe, and this knowledge is valid. So when you put a curriculum together, what you're saying is, this is the valid knowledge. This is the knowledge I accept. This is what I believe to be the real thing. And so back to the question, who owns your curriculum? Whose knowledge are you validating, right? These matters a lot. Let me ask you 3 questions just to further buttress that particular question. And I want each of you in this room to think about it and discuss with one another. Who wrote the textbooks that your students use? And in which country was it written? Who designed the assessment framework that your faculty members follow? And whose definition of quality does it embed? And finally, whose labor markets does your curricula actually prepare students for? Is it for your local market, or for a global market, or for a blend of both? And who decides the right one, by the way? So if you cannot answer these 3 questions with an affirmative confidence, if your honest answer is, well, maybe someone else, or well, somewhere else, or for that reason, well, it's not ours, then we have a curriculum sovereignty problem. Not just in Ethiopia. I know some of us here are from Kenya, some of us here are from France, and then, of course, majority of us here are Ethiopians. I'm from Nigeria. If we cannot answer that question with certainty, then there is a curriculum sovereignty problem, and that is what this session is all about. Let me put some numbers on the table. These are not hypothetical numbers. They are actually well documented by the World Bank, the IAU, the UNESCO, and what's not. 80% of African universities benchmark their curricula primarily against European or Northern American standards. Nothing wrong with that, I would say, but the question is, on whose terms? On whose terms are you benchmarking? 67% of employers in Sub-Saharan Africa actually report that graduates lack locally relevant competencies. This is by the World Bank in 2022. And less than 15% of research published by African experts, higher education institutions, address Africa's specific policy or development challenges. That's something to worry about. So we're bothered about every other person's problem but our problems. I beg your pardon. And 43 African countries have actually ratified the Addis Ababa Convention, yet harmonization remains a selective and partial process, with most institutions still deferring to northern accreditation bodies. What these data tells us is not that African universities are failing. No, we're actually doing very well. It tells us that we are succeeding. But the irony is that we're succeeding at something that was not necessarily designed for us to succeed at. Well, what does that tell you? It tells you you're pretty smart. Because if something was designed not for you essentially to succeed at, and yet you're doing great at it, what does that tell you? That you're good at it. Now think about when you do it yourself. It means you are producing graduates who are internationally credible on terms set elsewhere. So the question is, whose terms are we serving? Those terms, are they serving Africa's development or someone else's? To make this very concrete, I want to introduce the curricular autonomy spectrum to help us understand where we are. This is a diagnostic tool. It's at 5 levels, from fully imported to fully sovereign. And I need you to be very candid with your institution, with your courses, and with, your accreditation bodies in your various countries. So level 1 is a curriculum fully imported from an external partner. Here, you use it without adaptation. No local knowledge integration. This is most extreme form of curricular dependency. It exists. I have seen it. Some of you have actually lived it. I do not recommend this for any African institution. The second level is what I call the template adapted level. Here, an external framework with a surface modification is what's used at your institution. And the local context is treated as supplementary, not the main. It's treated as supplementary. And then the architecture is imported. However, the decoration is local. I think many African institutions are around this axis. But here's the middle point I think everyone should embrace. It's the level that's called the joint design. Genuine co-creation with external partners where local and global knowledge are in real dialogue. This is where most aspirational partnerships claim to sit, although we're very far from it. Like an example I will often cite, we've had, invitations from foreign organizations wanting to partner with us on joint programs, but when we come to the table, we start by asking ourselves, where do we meet? Where do we diverge? We don't take your curriculum hook, line, and sinker, no? We have a meeting point, and so we meet at the middle. We take the point of divergence, add to ours, and still keep what belongs to us. Same thing as yours when you're also offering a degree back into your university abroad. You take where we diverge to add that, sense of uniqueness, and of course, keep what you have. But the idea of just embedding everything without any local knowledge or local context or local ownership on our own terms, no, that belongs to the past, all right? So the level 3 is a joint design, which should be the least acceptable curriculum sovereignty status any institution in Africa should have. All right, and then the 4th level is what most institutions in Africa should now aspire towards as soon as they achieve level 3, which is internally led. At this level, curriculum is designed from within, benchmarked internationally. External standards inform the design, but do not govern it. Take note, it informs the design, but it does not govern it. The institution is the author, whilst the world is the peer reviewer. Think about this as when we all write our research publications. We don't need anybody around the world to govern how we write or what we write about. However, it's open science, and it's best practice to have it peer reviewed, because of course you might have contributions and thoughts from others that will make the work richer. So at this level, when we design our curriculum in tandem with other, our international standards, it's not that they govern us, rather it's more like a peer review process. Okay, so the world becomes the peer reviewer, but the institution stays as the author. The final level is the fully sovereign level. And at this level, curriculum is built from local knowledge systems, but voluntarily aligned with global standards. Take note of that. Why? Because of course we live in a global village. We're not going to confine our students or isolate ourselves all in the name of curriculum autonomy. No, we're actually going to ensure that they can thrive locally and as well as internationally. All right. So this is not a call for isolation. No, it's actually the apex of design confidence. You have designed it so well that you don't mind aligning it with global standards. So the goal is not level 5 at all costs. No, not at all. The goal is to know which level you're at, understand why, and then have a clear-eyed plan for where you want to go. I'll say that again. The goal today is not for you to hit level 5 at all costs, not at all. The goal is for you to know which level you're at right now, understand why, and then have a clear-eyed picture for where you want to go in the next 2-3 years. I acknowledge the 3 tensions that may occur as we try to drive towards curriculum autonomy, local relevance, and then, of course, global standards. But the first tension I would want to highlight and I acknowledge is global standards versus local relevance. International accreditations will definitely open doors, so we can shut those doors. It enables global and graduate mobility. It signals quality to employers across borders. These are real good things, you know. But those doors also open into spaces designed for a particular kind of graduates, shaped by a particular kind of education system. So the question is not whether to engage with global standards. The question should be, it is whether your institution sets the terms of that engagement. So my call is engage with the global standards, but set the terms of engaging with those global standards. The second tension is between the epistemic sovereignty and the academic mobility, all right? Your students need credentials to travel. Your institution needs to produce the knowledge that is rooted. But again, these are not incompatible, if you ask me, I would argue, but they require deliberate design, a curriculum that produces mobile graduates without rooted knowledge is a pipeline, not an institution. So if you focus only on producing mobile graduates who are not rooted in knowledge in your local context, you have just simply curated a pipeline where they fit into a different atmosphere, but not yours, instead of having an institution solving its own local problem. The third tension I acknowledge about what we're propagating today is, the tension between should we stay with cultural continuity or innovation adoption. New fields are emerging: artificial intelligence, climate science, digital health. And all of these actually matter deeply for Africa's development trajectory, I must say. So should we stay with our cultural continuity or embrace innovation? I will argue that both must be within the curriculum. They must be within the curriculum. But so also, should we keep the knowledge that predates this ones, all right? The institutional memory that holds the society together, we cannot delete it for innovation, okay? So the goal is not to resolve these tensions, as I mentioned. It cannot be resolved, but the goal is for you to govern them on your own terms. How much innovation can we take in? How much of our content can we keep? Or can we, eliminate because it's become obsolete, okay? So consciously and deliberately, we need to clearly define all of this and whose interests it's serving. If I put Ethiopia in focus, because of course we're in Ethiopia, I will say, is the fastest growing higher education system in Africa. Having built about 45 public universities since 2003, that is quite impressive. And it has also passed the Higher Education Proclamation in 2019, and that includes significant autonomy provisions. But here's where the talent really lies. The practical reality is that donor-funded curriculum reform programs from USAID, the World Bank, the EU continue to shape what is taught and how it is assessed. Nothing wrong with the funding. But my call to the Ethiopian government today is the fact that if institutions right now, if they can act right now, the next donor round of conditions would capture clauses that will propagate engagement on your own terms. What do I mean? The opportunity here is real. Ethiopia's reform agenda creates a genuine window for a curricular redesign so that If institutions act now, before the next round of donor conditions consolidates another imported, template, before the next donor round of, funding comes, you want to consolidate on what you already have, okay? The risk is equally real. If you keep, rapidly expanding your system without, independency or autonomy, you scale dependency faster instead of building capacity faster. So it's up to the Ethiopian government to decide how it wants to navigate. But for every university leader in this room, the question for the ETA here in Ethiopia is whether it wants to become an instrument of sovereign accreditation or whether it wants to remain a mechanism for international alignment by proxy. Think about that. Okay? As I begin to tidy up, this afternoon, we're all going to go back into our breakout room sessions. And in one of the breakout room sessions, you will use the IAS tool, the Institutional Autonomy Scorecard, to actually assess the curricular dimension of your institution's internationalization. And I would just want to quickly, preview the tool here. There are 5 indicators. One is the Program Design Authority, talking about who actually designs your program. And the second indicator is the Revision Authority, who approves changes to the curriculum of your program. The third is the External Mandate Influence, how much of your curriculum is shaped by conditions attached to external funding. If a funding ends today, how well will that program remain? Okay? And the fourth indicator is a local language integration. Is locally produced knowledge, local case studies, local design methodology, and epistemological frameworks integrated to your curriculum? Is it foundational to your curriculum? And there's also the stress test. If your institution cannot revise its curriculum without external approval, all these indicators automatically capped at 2. You can't score above 2 because design freedom without revision freedom is only an illusion. In conclusion, let me be concrete about what curricular sovereignty actually means and what it requires. If you want to obtain curricular sovereignty as a country or as an institution or within your course in that university, it requires, number one, first, internal design capacity, faculty who can design, revise, and defend curriculum without external consultants. This is an HR question as much as it's a governance one. African universities currently spend about $200 million on annual external curriculum consultancy, services. That's money flowing out of institutions that could actually be used to build capacity within the continent. Second, if you want to achieve curriculum sovereignty, without isolation per se, it requires second accreditation sovereignty. It requires, accreditation sovereignty. National quality assurance bodies that set standards from local development needs. Take note of that. And whose credentials first are recognized globally, internationally, through mutual recognition agreements, not hierarchical submissions, okay? The Addis Convention provides the legal infrastructure and architecture for this, but what's missing is a political will to implement it, okay? And finally, the third thing required to achieve curriculum sovereignty is what I call the production loop. The research produced at institutions in Africa should feed the curriculum design. Currently, 78%, as I mentioned, of African higher education institution research is not cited in teaching materials at the same institution. The university is generating knowledge that does not inform what it teaches. That is not an epistemological problem. That is a governance problem, and it is solvable. One mode we use at my institution is the fact that the university's sponsorship and support for other academic endeavors requires that 1 or 2 other academic staff members within the institution and their work have been cited in that work you're about to present to the public. That's a good way to start, but I need you to think about this in a moment. Let me close with this reframe. The curriculum is not a technical document. It's not a list of modules, don't mistake it. It's not a list of learning outcomes, not at all, and it's not a list of assessment criteria. It is a political statement. about whose knowledge counts. And so when internationalization strengthens your capacity to make this statement on your own terms, when it builds your faculty expertise, when it widens the knowledge of your sources and connects research to global conversations without surrendering your design authority, it's a tool for development. But when internationalization outsources that statement, when it means your curriculum is designed in Washington, assessed in London, and accredited in Brussels, it's a tool of dependency. So today in this plenary, in the roundtables that follow, in the breakout sessions this afternoon, we'll examine all of these questions and we decide which we are building. A tool of dependency or a tool of development. That choice is yours to make. The France Education International gives you this diagnostic tool. The framework gives you the language, but the decision is yours to take. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for Professor Ada. You gave us a very nice and insightful presentations. To speak frankly, I agree with all your ideas you mentioned. With all your ideas. And many of our countries are not really included many of our indigenous knowledge. That is a very important and timely issue. But the issue, for example, in Ethiopia, we have so many indigenous knowledge. Just call it how we are resolving conflicts. Even I knew some of medicines which is produced traditionally are better than the normal medicines that we eat. But the problem is, as the country, this might be also the problem of Africans, we are not documented all those indigenous knowledge. That's a big gap what we have. And recently, the Ministry of Education gave to all Ethiopian public universities an assignment to document all the regions that they have, all the indigenous knowledge. Recently, at least we have started there. If we had a very good document, if we wrote what the assets we have for this indigenous knowledge, we can include it. But at this time, it is a little bit difficult without having a very good written evidence to include all those issues. So maybe this might be a bit challenge. So if you have to include some of this local knowledge into our curriculum, what shall we do without having well-documented evidence? It is a bit difficult. I think this is not the problem of Ethiopia, but also the problem of all of Africans. But we have started it at least to document those important indigenous knowledge.
Okay.
That is one. The second one, yes, as I said, I agreed with all your ideas. But when we include those indigenous knowledge into the curriculum, how do you see internationalization versus these indigenous knowledge? For example, if we take the interest of the students, for example, if you go to one of the university and if you ask many of the students whether they wanted to make their PhD or master's degree, not locally, they select Europe. Of course, they do have their own interests. For example, I made my PhD degree in Germany. So during that time, they have evaluated my master's and my first degree course syllabus. And if it doesn't fit, they will not accept my PhD program. So what chance do we have to make this agreement to be acceptable in our curriculum internationally while we are including those indigenous knowledge? This is one of my questions. And you have raised a different curriculum design level from design 1 to design 5. Which curriculum design level do you recommend for Ethiopia case? Because you have mentioned so many opportunities. Also, that is very good because we have government gave us a lot of opportunities, and this autonomy was very important for all of us. So which level of curriculum design do you recommend, at least at this time? Of course, in the future, we will adopt the appropriate one. Thanks so much.
See.
Thank you very much. It was actually very, very interesting. So leave Ada maybe, if you want to reply to this question.
Or to the question, okay.
Good. I found it a bit challenging, right? It is challenging for you guys, so thank you.
All right, thank you very much for those insightful comments and questions. I'll start with the first one where you talked about the difficulty in using local knowledge that has not been tested, isn't it? How do you incorporate that? I think, like I said, the first point of call is being aware of where you are and then deciding in what direction you want to go. So you have acknowledged that this local knowledge exists and your government has actually done something to ensure that you start acknowledging your local source of knowledge, isn't it? Excellent. But here's a motivation for you. If I told you today that I'm going to pay you $5,000 for every hour you spend curating local knowledge, what would you do? So the challenge is not that the knowledge doesn't exist. It's the motivation to actually curate that knowledge. And you'll be very proud of curating it and publishing it in international journals. And let your peer reviewers critique what you have done. It's a way of getting that knowledge published and then making it useful for others. And of course, for you to do that, then you need to conduct, cases, experiments, right? And that you're getting evidence why it should be included in your curriculum. So my call to us today is to begin with that mindset that, even though it's not the case, but tell yourself that complete this research, I have $1 million waiting for me to test a particular knowledge. The motivation to globalize that local knowledge, it's called local knowledge, but it can be globalized, where it could be referred to as Ethiopian medicine for this disease, or Ethiopian methods for treating that issue, right? And then your professional colleagues will critique and say, oh, well, the procedure and this and that, the risk, but that's the beauty. They critique to make it better, okay? Not to shut down your own perspective. They critique to make it better. So my encouragement to us is do not say, well, we don't have local knowledge. In fact, the one that your government has documented, can you begin to test them out? Conduct experiments, research, or they found that this plant has a component that can actually take away headache instead of taking paracetamol. Okay, can we try that? You conduct studies. I know sometimes we use rag labs, or laboratories, I beg your pardon, to come up with evidence. But the point is that it's now in the global space. It's no more locked in the village or in the rural areas of Ethiopia. You see? We have several cases like that in Nigeria, where we're now beginning to translate local knowledge into global, ideas. Okay, the next one is international, standards versus local, knowledge. If your first and second degree training didn't meet up with the German standards, perhaps you wouldn't have gotten the offer for your PhD. My contribution to that will be, who says that when you integrate your local knowledge that Germany would reject it? I think it's an assumption that we all have, that when it's not foreign, it's substandard. No, that's not the case. And when we say foreign, so let me use this example. The foreign version says, use needle to poke. I'm just using an example, to poke, for the process to happen. But your local standard says, no, there is a stone from some river. When you scroll it on your finger, in less than 2 minutes, blood will come out. Wait a minute. What in what? Blood. The poking brings blood. The stone brings blood. Well, in my academic mind, I can argue that, well, perhaps the blood that comes from the stone is not same as the one that comes. So we check. We conduct the experiment to show that actually nothing, the components of the blood is not altered, the method notwithstanding. And so if that becomes the case and it's published, there's no way the German, education system will reject it. No, it's unique to you. Do you see China, trying to impress Germany? No. They have their local knowledge, but of course, merged with international standards. So that mindset, and again, it starts from us who are the members of faculty who think that, well, we must do the German way or must do the Swedish way. No. Our local knowledge is still very valid. And then finally, what was your last question again? Oh, the one I recommend. So first, I recommend the joints, remember them? Right? Where you're not absolutely cut off and you're not absolutely also dependent. That's a better place to be, all right? You need to move away from 1 and 2, come to 3, okay? And then walk towards 4 and 5, all right? Thank you.
Thank you. So you must have a balance. I guess you have one question this side. If you, sir, and then she has. Okay. The mic is. And just after your question, I may ask a question to Catherine to have the Kenyan's point of view. Yes.
Okay, thank you for the chance, and thank you, Professor Peter, for your excellent presentation. And you flooded us with lots of curricular philosophies. Actually, I take it as the questions that you posed are philosophical questions, and most of them are epistemological philosophies. That is excellent. I do have some questions related to accreditation and instruction with local language. As you know, all the higher learning institutions currently are trying to get their programs
Accredited.
local accredited as well as international accredited. In your presentation, you implied that curricula should be internal accredited but internationally recognized. To me, these things appears to be a bit paradox. It's a bit difficult. For example, if Ethiopian curricula are all internal accredited internally, meaning taking into account the local contexts, demands, needs, whatever in the West. But our interest may not be the interest of the global or the international student. For example, if a student wants to come to Ethiopia from your country, Nigeria, so the interest of the Nigeria may not be that of the Ethiopia. Ethiopia designed its program based on its need, but that need may not be the need or the interest of the Nigeria for somewhere else to the world. So how can we negotiate or how can we compromise this issue? I know that universities are universal, so that they have to address global issues. But in your presentation, you emphasize it on internal accreditation. So how are we negotiate this idea? The other thing is that you presented about the instruction in local language and universities and the like. I found it a bit difficult in our context because Ethiopia is characterized by the university where there are more than 80 ethnic groups are there. To me, a classroom is a small world where diversity is a feature. For example, if I use, let's say, Avan Romo in my classroom, there are students who cannot listen Avan Romo. They will be in disadvantage. And if I use, let us say, Amharic, there are students who cannot listen Amharic in the class. So how can, even one of the criteria for the teacher of rising violation and the quality assurance director, and I called it teacher performance evaluation. Criteria number 1 is, does the teacher use English language in his classroom during the instruction? So is it possible? So how can we address this? The other thing is, in your presentation, you gave us the designs, actually the different designs here, problem-based design is there, situational design is there, blah, blah, blah. But you did focus on the implementation of the curriculum because there are different approaches of curriculum implementation, like the fidelity approach, mutual enactment, and what we call the adaptive enactment and like that. So implementation is a problem in our country. Thank you so much.
Right, MSc. Thank you very much. Okay, I'll start with the language matter. So you have 80 in Ethiopia. We have 250 ethnic groups in Nigeria. 250. But this is what we have done in Nigeria, that at primary, at secondary schools, you learn at least one of the dominant local languages. There are 3 dominant local languages: Igbo, Yoruba, and Hausa. What are the dominant languages in Ethiopia? Do we have any dominant one? Yes. No? Is there a dominant, or at least, do we have at least 5 dominant languages in Ethiopia? Yes. So you offer those as options. You see, whilst you're instructing in English, all students can take at least one of those. And that's how come we have French, Mandarin in Nigerian education system, right? And then our local languages. As we speak, my daughter is learning my local language in school, even though we speak it at home. But she has a teacher called Igbo teacher. Okay, I've told you my ethnic group now, right? An Igbo teacher. Then you also have the Yoruba teacher. There's also the Hausa teacher. So you choose which language, and the same way you're examining her in English, where they're examining her in that language. So that when she leaves, she can at least speak one indigenous language, teach in one indigenous language, communicate in one indigenous language, do business in one indigenous language, not just only English. So my call is not for you to abandon, teaching in English or whatever language, maybe French in Francophone countries. No, it's the fact that you don't do that at the expense of your own local language. You integrate at least one of your own local language. Does that help? It doesn't. I think your impression is, you should deliver lectures in Ishara, right? The language. Amharic, exactly. Yes, that's not the call. The call is not for, everyone in Ethiopia, you must learn go through academic schools learning Amharic. No. In fact, they are more globalized when they can switch from one to the other. So my call is, whilst you're at the School of Law or School of Medicine, there is a course that's strictly taught in one language, but it's your choice to make. So that I know, usually when you have diversity in a country, that ethnic group will say, why is it your language? Why is it not mine? And then another one will say, why is it your own? Why is it not, So you let people choose. So the government has to make room to cover at least the dominant languages. When I say dominant, in other words, most of the country understands that language. Most of the country will speak that language. So for example, in the Igbo dialect alone, there are about 6 to 10 variations of Igbo. But when a different dialect speaks, I can understand, but that's not my dialect. So I think in Ethiopia, there should be that kind of configuration that might work, okay? Now, the second, question you raised is implementation. So that was not for this plenary session at all, where I'm supposed to be teaching, implementation, of curriculum design and what's not. No. There's a version of it during the breakout session. So I believe if you go in there, and of course, that's a different, pot of soup altogether. And perhaps the French Education International might do something about it. And then to your first question, local accreditation versus, the local limitations that it brings and, the international approvals, isn't it? So I think you're presuming that your local accreditation being, if I say you should go for local accreditation, it makes that accrediting body is only relevant locally. No. So for a national accreditation body to set up what it takes to accredit your program, it must have done an extensive review of what's required locally and what's compatible internationally, but it owns it. It's not some standards dictating what to be done. And in actually building that accreditation process, it's also connecting with colleagues outside of its own local jurisdiction to make contributions so that there is a co-creation and co-ownership. But that external accreditor is not coming to dictate to it. Just imagine I write a paper, I'm sending it to my professor at Harvard. I'm not seeking his consent to write that paper. I'm only seeking his thoughts on what I have written and his critique and his arguments. And I can raise a counter argument if he raises any. You see that? So when your local accreditation body, curates what you require as an institution to be accredited, I don't expect that it did it in isolation. It must have done it in consonance or in tandem with several other accrediting bodies around the world, because of course we live in a global village. You don't do things in isolation, but it owns that accreditation. And so in that process of co-creating, you see there's a sense of co-ownership coming from those other bodies. Do you see that? So when it accredits you, it's almost as if that other body has said, yeah, well done. You see what I mean? So it's not in conflicts. They're actually tandem. Thank you.
And I'm going to jump on this question of accreditation because I want to ask Catherine, in this regional framework, African framework, what role should a regional framework such as the harmonization and initiative of the African Union and continental higher education strategy play in curriculum reforms in terms of both curriculum design and I will even say further on accreditation? Okay, so in Africa, I think the main body is African Union and their continental frameworks for curriculum. And so this harmonizes all curriculums in Africa. And also we have UNESCO. I believe like Ethiopia, you have a regulatory agency that gives you guidelines, standards for curriculum in your universities and also from primary and high school. So basically their main mandate is to assure there is harmonization. For example, if a student from University of Nairobi wants to come to Addis Ababa or Avasa University, you can have good credit transfer. You're able to convert and still do the same course, but using the same curriculum. So that's one of their main mandates. And I think also, even at university level, when you're developing your curriculums, you need to align them, first of all, towards your regulatory agency in Ethiopia or Kenya or wherever you are, but also align the African Union framework and also the UNESCO standards. Because these are clear and the guidelines are clear. If you do that, then we don't have any issue when you're doing credit transfers or when you're having to pay the staff mobility. And this creates then another role for regional regulators is that during staff mobility should be easy because we assume harmonization already exists and that you have all similar curriculum. And in the region, what we've done, we have what we call, I'll give an example of East Africa. Inter-University Council of East Africa that gives benchmarks for all the curriculum. So for example, if you have a certain curriculum in a certain discipline, then there are benchmarks already in the notes. So that means you don't have to start from scratch. And to have that harmonization, then you can use those benchmarks and develop your curriculum and align it to what is the standards in the region. I don't know, I think West Africa, South Africa, so they have their own governing bodies for that region. So that makes it easier for students and staff mobility to make easier credit transfers and easier to have a curriculum that is harmonized across regions. In terms of language, the guidance by AU, Continental Framework, is that up to grade 4, you can use your local language. Of course, it's not mandatory. In Kenya years back, we used to teach in local languages to a certain level in grade 4, and then after that we produce other foreign languages like Italian, Kiswahili, and English. I know EU at some point had tried to have Swahili, a common language in Africa, and I think most of the countries actually adopting Swahili as a language, but also in country in Kenya right now because of the student background and multinationality of the students that we are teaching, we no longer teach mother tongue in any level in our education system. So what we do, we train in English and Swahili right from the beginning, and then in high school up to the university, you have the option of taking either German, French, Italian, or Spanish, or any other relevant Korean language. So that is a choice. And so from high school, then you'll see people speaking in English, Israeli, another foreign language. And of course, based also on your professionalism, you can choose another language later in your career that you can do apart from the Swahili and English. So that, because of internationalization of the curriculum, will breast other languages so that it's common across board. If I imagine at the University of Nairobi, you have Ethiopian students, you have people from Rwanda, Malawi, and other countries, and they are sitting in your classroom. So you can only use a language that can be understandable by all these nationalities. So for the universities, these are a bit different because of internationalization of the curriculum, and that we are teaching students and doing research with students from different nationalities, even staff members. You can have a staff member, for example, in Awasa or Amo or Jima University, coming from maybe South Africa, and so maybe they can understand the local language. That means that you need to use a common language. The other thing I want to mention about African Union and other regional regulatory standards and guidance is that we are now having a transition, literally in Africa, where we are moving to competency-based curriculum. So this means that as you design your curriculum, you need to build some competencies that once your graduate comes out of the university, they should be able to, or they should be competent to perform a certain assignments. The industry doesn't have to retrain your student or to retool your staff members, but the art curriculum should be that competent. And so in Kenya, we are happy now, most of the lower education levels have the competency-based curriculum, and also the universities are now by 2030 required to also, according to the continental guidelines, to move to competency-based premier learning. That's a requirement. It is a transition. So depending on the different universities, you might be at different levels. At the end of the day, that is the requirement at African level.
Now, I can't help telling you that multilingualism is a challenge as well in Europe and even in States. Even with, as you know, French people, I can't help saying that, are very attached to their own language. Even more friend than in any other European country. And definitely 90% of the curricula in French, this is the threshold, but at the French university is taught in French. Correct. And this is the case. And we stick to that because we want our language to be still the main academic language. And this is a concern in terms of internationalization as well. Of course, there, like all countries in general, just opportunity to our staff, academic, and student staff to go abroad. So we'll emphasize and this learning of other languages, like German, Spanish, Mandarin, now like Arabic, even so. Even some actually African languages as well, because I say that we are one of the oldest institutes of Oriental languages in France. It dates back from the 17th century. It's called INACO, and you can learn any language. When I say any language, you can learn Amharic, you can learn, of course, all kinds of indigenous, as you say, language. I think you can even learn Igbo at INACO. But language is still an issue even in Europe, with 27 countries in the European Union. So, we share it as well, this concern with you, with all of the African countries. If I may continue this question of recognition and international coordination, Françoise, how can universities avoid, as mentioned by Ada, excessive dependence on imported curriculum models while still achieving international recognition? Yes, thank you, Fatou. In my opinion, universities can avoid excessive dependence on imported curriculum models in four main ways. First, it programs around local strengths and needs. Instead of copying the entire foreign curricula, adapt international ideas and methods to local contexts. Use local case studies, national regulations, and regional challenges at the core of its programs. This keeps the curriculum relevant locally while still using globally recognized standards and methods. Second, develop strong internal quality processes that are internationally aligned. Universities should set up internal quality assurance systems that are transparent and measurable, such as your review, student feedback, and learning and course tracking. When these systems are aligned with international frameworks, they allow the institution to get trust and recognition abroad, even if content is locally designed. Third proposition, engage balanced international partnerships. Choose partnerships where both sides co-design programs, share responsibility for quality, and jointly supervise students and faculty. This kind of equitable partnership reduces dependence on a single foreign model, and it creates hybrid programs that are recognized and valued in several countries. And fourth idea, universities should communicate clearly what is distinctive and valuable locally. In France, we recently asked university to identify what we call their signature, what makes them unique, their specificity, their brand. In international discussions, universities should highlight not only the number of agreements, as we saw yesterday, or provide students, but also the specific competencies, research impacts, and social contribution of their graduates. In the EU members, we have developed the diplomacy permit. The diplomacy permit is an official document attached to a higher education diploma. It provides a standards description of the qualification, its level, the program competence, the competence required, national rating system, and the national higher education context. Its main purpose is to improve transparency and make qualification easier to understand, compare, road, so that employers and universities can better recognize what graduates have achieved. This kind of evidence-based visibility is what truly leads to international recognition without reporting ready-made curricula. I'd like to highlight that universities and states should engage in international processes and adopt common co-constructed tools to describe the quality of their programs in a shared language. This builds trust between systems, supports genuine international recognition. In the end, international recognition should not depend on copying foreign models, but on making quality, transparency, and a clear identity that speaks to both local needs and global audience.
Thank you very much. And it's interesting to stress on that the European Union have put in place this ECTS that makes European credit transferable system. Once again, it's not here to copy paste this European system. It's just for the Ethiopian universities and the African universities as well to just take the advantages and to drawbacks of such a system. And once again, you may yourself you want to PhD. Any comments or question from the, yes, sir? Please, Ish.
Thank you very much. A little bit I am away from the discipline because I am not in that kind of training, but a professor is here to rearrange whatever kind of mistakes I have come. It is a very good opportunity to raise one issue that this curriculum design were presented, we well understood it. Sovereignty, authority is accompanied the lecture. And therefore, as there is a driving force for curriculum design, there is also a driving force for curriculum revision. In that, I think the expertise will handle this question to learn more from what driving forces are important for curriculum revision, from above or from below, the interest of indigenous knowledge mentioned the core or differently. What is the lifetime of the designed curriculum? The incubation time of the curriculum, I can say, and thank you.
Okay. 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 Thank you very much, Professor from the University of Addis Ababa. Each time I see you, I see University of Addis Ababa. Now I see another University of Addis Ababa. So if I understand your question correctly, what should trigger a curriculum revision? Employability. You need to go, why are you training students? Why do they come to you for education? It's because they want to go through the system and be employable or be useful to the society or be able to contribute to the community. So when you realize and notice that what you're teaching is no longer relevant to the current needs, trends, and problems of your society, locally, nationally, internationally, it's a call for revision, for a curriculum overhaul. I'll give you an example. In the case of Nigeria, I think 2 years ago, we moved from the B mass to the CC mass. It was a total overhaul of the entire curriculum in Nigeria. And why was that? Every other thing we were teaching appeared quite obsolete. And can I even shock you? Even the CC mass right now is already falling short of what's required, thanks to the new developments in the society and the changes that are, happening. So what really triggers a curriculum revision is relevance. If the current curriculum is no longer serving the need of the society, then it's mandatory that you revise the curriculum. I'll give an example. Imagine if today someone was still teaching how to use the typewriter. The push buttons. Forget it. So you need to revise that curriculum. If it's no longer relevant, you need to revise it. So revision, is motivated by one, employability and relevance. Employability and relevance. Thank you, sir.
It was universal level.
Question correct, yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor Dakar. 20 years ago, we have designed curriculum with the help of German experts, the engineering program. We have engineering capacity building programs, so-called. And at that time, we applied it to have accreditation, German accreditation program to be for engineers, for global force, the governments are designed also. The programs, we go collecting USD for accreditations by preparing of the curriculum with a consultation of journal professors. They just try to advise, and we adapt also the ECTS as that. I think the Ethiopian curriculum also it says being used So what's problems that time we face is, oh, the curriculum is very nice, it's well designed. The problem which we face is the requirements, especially the laboratory requirement, the facilities are not there. And also suddenly the human resource. Even at Ababa University at that time doesn't qualify the requirement back in the German standard. The number of professors are limited, teachers also limited. So we say that go back and work on the requirement of this one. I think after 20 years, last year, I think the Bahrain University and the as to Addis Ababa University, they have accredited with ABETS, the American accreditation for the engineering program especially. The problems I have question on the practice, not only the requirement materials, but the instructor readiness is very challenging. So we need to make the instructors to be ready with the new curriculum, with the new requirement is a very challenging one. And mostly usually the instructors want to break it the usual one. Not the new normal, but the usual, the previous design curriculum, and the materials needs more effort. The requirement of laboratory also more effort. And I think in design of the curriculum, the implementation issue, the practice issue, is the other challenge we face, both locally and internationally. One of the issues, just to have comment on that one. Second one, my question is related to the evolving needs of this high and the new norms of economic and other curriculums also, because we have been always thinking about the 3 years, 4-year programs for the students in the universities. I think what will happen after release of the things, years, even now also, the students are not interested to stay in the classroom for a long time. So they have the materials, even the materials they got from the outside, the instructors are more rich than our instructors. So they say that we don't want to go to class because we don't get more from our instructors. And this is a big issues of the knowledge issues, what kids. And the dangers of time, my question is, the duration of time for the study. Could it be similar like the old one? Does we need to shorten our duration of time, or can we remain the same? Because the will be changed. Because the class is becoming boring for the young students. They don't want usually 2 hours, 3 hours sitting in the class. For them is one thing, and the other is the instructors are not also prepared well to fit our young students.
Okay.
So this is my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, so I'll start with the very last question. We definitely know that the current generation, I won't use the word suffer, but their attention span is super low, particularly for listening, just listening to you. The attention span is very low. But what we observed is when it's engaging, when it's hands-on, when it's practical, they lose sense of time. So I will think that the issue you raised right now is more of a pedagogical issue. The way you teach in Ethiopia, the way, not just in Ethiopia, in all the countries, right? If today you want to come to class and say, good morning, everyone, how are you? Engineering can be defined as, the topic of our class today is, you lost them already. They're gone. You know why? Because exactly what you're saying, they're on the mobile phone, Googling it, and checking, and read. So why should I listen to you? To come to class and repeat a definition I can find myself. What I need you for as an expert in the class is to open up the dynamics of that definition. Tell me something I don't know. something that definition raises, a problem it raises. And if we were to put the definition to what are the issues coming up, that's the 3-day. That's hands-on. In some, social science courses, then it becomes more of a case study. You don't come to class to define what is political science. No, you put them in groups. You are from Ethiopia. This is Kenya. We have an issue. This concept says we should resolve it this way. How should we resolve it? It makes them come alive. So what you're talking about is not necessarily that duration. I don't think it's an issue of content. It's an issue of delivery. How are you delivering it? So you want to come up with more creative pedagogical approaches to teaching, and that should resolve the issue with time. If you're coming to class to just, define things for them, it's not gonna work. Or to tell them there are 17 types of, they know that already. Even before they came to class, they'll give you all the types. So what's your relevance? So I think this is more of a problem of the instructors. And maybe another capacity building session might be useful in terms of pedagogical approaches for teaching different kinds of courses. When they are mathematical courses, can you make them problem-based? Rather than just coming to drop formulas and then work the formula out. No, you inject that formula into a real-life scenario where they are seeing the practical utility of what you're saying, not simply, just coming to write formulas. That will not resonate at all, right? And then your other question you're talking about implementation. So the accreditors say, this is what you have to do, this is what you have to do, but implementing is a different ballgame. Well, I think that has to do more internally than, having any external body, help you execute what you have set out. And I agree that there might be shortcomings and issues with that. It could be resource-based, it could be the openness of industry to absorb your engineers, to let them have hands-on experience, all of those. But I think it's more of a governance issue rather than, an issue that has to do with, faculty members. So it has to come from the governing council, the education, governing council to stipulate, and then the government also backing it and asking every organization or engineering-related company in the country that each year they must report how many interns they have absorbed, to get hands-on training at no cost, or if they like, they can give them stipends as well. So every organization might be mandated when it's preparing its annual report to show that it has recruited maybe 1/4 of its current staff strength. In other words, if you have about 20 member of staff, you should have at least taken in 5 interns into your organization. That will solve the problem of implementation because they're in the industry, they will have the opportunity to test out the competencies you're teaching. Thank you.
On this question, I think it would be very relevant to have the point of view of university, in fact, the French universities, regarding the relevance of curriculum design here. Because, sir, you mentioned that your curriculum weren't refunded or you refused, for 20 years. This is more or less what you say, if I'm understood correctly. And this is quite different in France and in other countries. So I think it would be interesting to have the point of view of the university first, and then explore, as you said, Ministry of Higher Education.
Okay. I try to explain it. In France, we have, of course, a system of accreditation too. And this is a 5-year accreditation for all programs. And 5-year because it is linked to the 5-year agreement that exists, but did exist. It's changing. It's changing this year. But it was a 5-year contract, a 5-year agreement between each university and the state being the Ministry of Higher Education, Research and Space. But each university has the capacity, the freedom of inventing, of designing their own courses. The university diplomas, for example, they are not national diplomas, of course. So we have that freedom in each university. François, what will be Friedrich? You want to say something on that? No, no. François, sorry, what would be interesting? It's what's the ministry point of view, right? Curriculum design. She's the head of the department of presentation. The structured process at university. So, do you think we should set up a deadline for the curriculum, or it should be the universities deciding of the updating of the curriculum? What are you so? What are you writing?
I think it's necessary to implement the regular process to revise the curriculums and the degrees to organize, because there are so many diplomas that if everyone wants to redesign all the curriculum, it becomes be easy to assess and all the development types, and you need time to develop this curriculum during some years, or to see what kind of employability or study question is possible with them. So you need time to develop a program, and you need kind of assessments every 4, 5, 6 years, maybe. As based on quality shoots in Europe, this European process will share between all the European countries of the colonial process, for example, or quality assurance agencies. So it's equals to us take scale and review.
Thank you. Catherine, you wanted something? I think it's the same with France. For us, every 5 years we would revise some curriculum. More than 5 years is much, but also within the 5 years, based on the industry needs, economic factors, and also technological advancement. Whether you're in theory, health sciences, agriculture sciences, it's always new technologies coming in, innovations. You can do a vision of one card. We do one card. You can do it in the department without adding in the whole process of accreditation and also presentation, Senate, and the regulatory body. It's more than a card, and we take it through that process. And our procedures usually are long as animating, but at least every 5 years, can voice or career to align to the industry needs and also technology part passwords.
Thank you, Infinity. Had something?
Excuse me. Just to add something, is in France, as François said, accreditations occur every 5 years. But within the university, every year, we have a process of improvement of curricula, and we try. Don't say, you see, we try to have a special committee. We conduct development advices committee with both employer and academic staff. We try to have a feedback of the teaching and how the content of the courses must be modified according to the employer expectations.
Just one sentence, very short. I think we can say that French universities are dreaming of a global accreditation and not of accreditation for each diploma. It's not a secret dream. It's a very visible dream, well expressed by French universities.
Thank you, François. Let's touch down now, and I will do some question, but I want to touch down now on not only curriculum design with student employability, always in the frame of the internationalization. And I have this question to Frédéric, because more and more we see universities that want to ensure the benefits of internationalization to all students. And if we link that with the curriculum designs, we have very few curricula that are fit for international purpose. So how can university ensure that internationalization benefits all students rather than only a small elite?
Thank you for your questions. Just to begin with, remember the data that I showed you yesterday in the first slide of the UNESCO reports 2026. According to these reports, only 3% of students worldwide above international mobility. 3%. It's very, very few. And this highlights the scale of the challenge that we are facing. Among these 3%, approximately half are Chinese and Indian students. The half. And it represents the largest internationally mobile students. And the other half, France, it's 5%. And the only African countries is Nigeria, 5%. And it's 5% of 3%. And in France, 4% of 3%. It's very few. And once again, we underline that most of the time in this meeting, we face the same problems.
Yes.
We face the same problems. Yes. And university can try, perhaps in future succeed, that internationalization benefits to home students by adopting a comprehensive and inclusive approach. Inclusive internationalization means shifting from the model based only on the physical mobility to a comprehensive and socially responsible models in which every student can acquire international, intercultural, global skills as part of a higher education experiences. This is called internationalization for at home model. Internationalization at home model. This model of curriculum is considered as the main pillar of the problems. Internationalizations become then an integral part of the educational path for all students that you include internationalizations within the curricula. This requires integrity in international and intercultural dimensions directly in teaching methods, in contents of the courses. Campus life is life of students. The aim is also to connect internationalizations with employability and societal challenge and global challenge. Then the university can develop internationalization of the curriculum through different tools, integrate global challenge into the programs. It's a kind of internationalizations. Use digital tools such as massive overt online courses, which is developed 40 years ago. It's not really perhaps a good success. And the new tools, digital tools, is I speak about that a little bit yesterday. It's collaborative online international learning or COILS, which is a new digital tools to meet together international students. You have also multi-language educations, joint online projects, and intercultural activities, and inclusion of global perspectives in all disciplines. Perhaps a focus on the core of programs. Collaborative online international learning developed by State University of New York in 2000, and these tools developed very well in the most significant university. One of the most significant concrete tools at home because it demonstrates very clearly how internationalizations can be integrated directly into teaching and made accessible to a large number of school students. COIL models is now used by hundreds of universities, and in European Alliance initiative, lots of alliances developed COIL between different universities, which is belong to the same alliance. How it was in practice, and I fit perhaps part of the response to equilibrate local and global and internationalizations of the curricula. Because the main fact, the main important fact, is that jointly design part of the course. Course is jointly design.
Joint design.
Joint design by the two partnerships, two international parties. Then at the beginning, we equilibrate the participations of the partnerships. After you define your shared learning objectives, you organize collaborative projects between students for global challenge, for example, and use digital tools to facilitate interactions. Then students remain in their home institutions, but work together over several weeks or months, perhaps years. A concrete examples, it's for example between an American university and African university. Don't remember which one. I think it's a South African university about public health. Public health is really global challenges, and we can't understand public health if we don't have international partnerships. For example, in my university, we create public health curricula, and the main problems is to have partnerships in different parts of the world. It is necessary for students to understand public health with its partnerships. Then this kind of experience of code was used in public health courses between these two universities. Perhaps to finish, a drawback of a code model is not the perfect one. You have also, for advantage, was also drawbacks. The digital and distant interaction is not fully experienced, and it replaces not physical mobility, and it's a part of the problems. Digital inequalities and infrastructures, also quality internet connections. You need very good tools to have a very good connection between students distant at several thousands of kilometers. Significant workload for teachers. It's lots of work to develop scores, and meant you need time in the lead money. Pedagogical and intercultural difficulties, and difficulty in assessment also. How to assess the level of students when you use code. It's also a problem. It's a problem from a MOOC systems, but also for course.
Thank you. We can take one or two questions, just two, sorry to say so, before the break. And then after the break, of course, we continue. We can take, please, one or two sessions. Sir on the front row. And was Ben on the side. Yeah, okay.
Thank you so much, Prof. Ada. Thank you for your insightful presentation. It's an appreciate.
Thank you.
I have two questions for you. One, who is the owner of curriculum of your country? The FMIC departments around the university. And the other one is, in one of your slides, I saw that 78% of the research output from African researchers is not cited in the text. It's been said. But have you figured out what is the reason? Why? Why were not citing? Is it relating with the funding? Is it relating with the way we do research and the way we report for the international community? You can say something, but this needs really a clear question. The other one is regarding to this, the indigenous knowledge is very important. the Ethiopian Ministry of Education, I know that they put a lot of effort to integrate indigenous knowledge in the curriculum. As you all know, curriculum starting from the grassroots, KG, and mid-level, 10 university. I know we are talking about higher education, but when you see our textbook in high school and elementary school, I can say that most of the indigenous knowledge from different parts of Ethiopia is included, especially these famous researchers like Akiulama, and their work is including in the textbook as well as their lab. So I can say that still there, and even in the university, especially in history and in some life science, still we are using all the textbook. So I can say that still we need to go far, but not close to this. I would say thanks so much.
Right, thank you.
I take the question, actually.
Okay. Sorry. No problem.
Who owns the curriculum in Kenya? History University, because once you do the curriculum, it has to be a university for it has to meet the regulatory standards very low. And of course, but the technical content, of course, called initiate panelists up on the packets, where that a club was developed socially of the technical experts. But now to make it more international, height, the guidelines, that standards, the country and also the region, it has to go up the university level. So the university actually owns the curriculum, and there's a quality assurance department in the university that really checks that that plan meets all the guidelines and standards.
Thank you. I will let you answer.
No, it's
And who wants the curriculum in France? François?
I think the universities own the curricula beneath the supervision of the ministry.
Okay, thank you, Ella.
okay. Thank you. And so to the question, who owns the curriculum? And if you recall, in answering that question, we looked at several factors. Number one, the textbooks, right? The assessments, the accreditations, right? And so those three factors culminate in answering that question. So in Nigeria, he still falls back to the issue you raised. It's beyond just, the development, because if we look critically, even the technical experts within the departments, who are they referring to? Who are they, citing? Who are they, reading to be able to curate that technical document? So the question falls back to that 78% of uncited or overcited work. It means also that 22% of our works are cited, but that's not enough, right? That's what I'm saying. So you mentioned that some popular researchers are cited. Absolutely. Even within the continent, we try to cite ourselves within what we're teaching, but what we're advocating is that there should be more. Okay, and then you ask the question, why? Why is it that way? What's the problem? For me, from my perspective and the little research I've done, I think it comes more from self-identity, self-belief, and belief that what you know counts. If you remember, I mentioned that. There is this unwritten, it's not written anywhere, but it's just somewhere at the back of our minds as Africans that there are some other persons who have a superior knowledge to what you know. So until you deal with that perception, you will not be confident enough. And I say this because perhaps I have dealt with that mindset. And I have seen, I have been there, and I can tell that, wait a minute. Okay, let me not say what I wanted to say. But wait a minute, we're equally as smart, right? Nobody's smarter. If I put this in the Nigerian context, when Nigerians leave Nigeria, they do so well, if not better. Like you mentioned yesterday, you sent your students to France, Professor Fatou, and the report was that your students are amazing. They even thought that there was going to be a language barrier, right? So there has to be a reorientation, a reframing of our minds as Africans to understand that what you know is not any less than what anybody else knows. Rather, you're coming from a different perspective. I had one of my Harvard professors say to me, I like the way you think. Well, and how the way I think, I actually think in, maybe it's African. I think in instances. So he was teaching something, and what I was thinking was how mosquitoes bite and transmit blood and disease, to explain a concept that is so unrelated to mosquitoes and malaria. But he made the concept very explicit. That's how I think. And so it is not subordinate or less than an American professor who will think of it differently and come from a different perspective. It's just that we're seeing the world very differently. So the rationale behind that, I'm being very blunt this morning, is you first need to acknowledge that what you know is valid and that you can put it in writing and others can read it and they will find it useful. I think that will help, switch, the amount of textbooks that we have for our curriculum. Thank you.
Very, very short question. Then we'll have a break and we'll take questions. So after the break.
Okay, thank you. My name is Esteoule. I'm from Geography University, Department of Diplomacy and International Relations. I went to ask, because this is one of the relevant session for us at the moment, because we are working on curriculum development for undergraduate students of political science and international relations. And one of our findings is when we conduct need assessment for this curriculum initiation is the existing curriculum elsewhere in Ethiopian universities elsewhere is more of theoretically embedded in the last practicality, which base for making some revisions, reorientation of the existing curriculum. The other finding is it is Eurocentric, that the information we gathered from alumni institutions, academic institutions. So this is at least where I make the findings majorify. You see that our challenge at the moment is how to make this cherry embedded curriculum very practical. What does it mean? The need for linking our curriculum with the institutions, with the core institutions related to our discipline. How to make that practically. I went to ask what modalities of linking university curriculum with the institutions. Is how to make it very practical so that it is engaging the students, engaging staff, and engaging industry practitioners. So is that in the what modalities from the real world experience that you could share? The second one is how to make it the very local. So the Eurocentric means it lacks relevance to the local context. So how to make this curriculum oriented towards this issue of local language, indigenization topics here are also there with us. And then maybe where's the trade-off between indigenization and internationalization? How we indigenize at least partly the curriculum I still meet international standard. Because by international standard, also begs question who sets those standards so that the local issues, indigenous issues are going to live this international standard respect. Maybe how to practically make that is my question.
Thank you. Maybe Catherine and then we. Okay. Thank you for that question. I think for me, a starting point should be how we design your curriculum. Of course, as much as we want to align Muskokatai
standards and guidelines within your archy, also regionally and globally. You can Ethiopian law is going to be delivered because curriculum delivery and implementation is a whole different ballgame. So you can align it, make sure that, as I said, you are moving to competency based. So in the course this picture, you can have more competency based, for example, courses, and includes a practical teaching efforts like practical leadership and all that. That is in the curriculum itself. And the issue of even, I know in our curriculum template, there is somebody operating the 4 reading categories and references. You can link to your authors, books already published by your own people, but also service or international PP perspectives, international reports. You are actually when you read the curriculum. And even that you are supposed to do a needs assessment with a stakeholder, that means you're also aligning it with the socioeconomic actors and your stakeholders. It could be farmers, the industry. So it means you're meeting all these demands in the design even as you put the curriculum. But for me, there's a section on background and philosophy of your curriculum that also you need to make it a bit international. You need to align this to international goals, like how does it address the SDGs? You know, that is global. As much as you're using local context, but achieve those sustainable global goals, for example, you can show how locally your solutions make sure that the private can solve problems at a global level, but also at a local level. So for me, that has to be the curriculum design. But now comes the implementation. Here's something we call constructive alignment. That means you need to have to align with stated learning outcomes, objective learning activities, and the assessment. They should be aligned so that they're able to test the skills and competencies of the grad books that they're going to produce. My first CEDU project at the university was enhancing the quality of graduates. And in our employer survey, it was found that 40% of the graduates from the universities in Kenya do not have the required skills and competencies. So the industry had to determine them. And so these causes a problem. This means that your curriculum was not actually aligned to the industry demand. The other thing we observed that most staff members are not trained on curriculum, are not trained on pedagogical methods. And this means that we were trained, of course, with the collaboration with EU partners and also global partners. We were trained as TOTs, and then we trained everyone in the university teaching. Because you could be a professor, but you're not a teacher. And so you don't have the skills, in fact, necessary skills and competencies. So the university did a university-wide training of every lecturer on, first of all, curriculum design, because you are the people who own it, at departmental level, you are the people to design it and implement it. So we taught across board, and I can tell you we had major transformation. Gone are the days, you know, the stereotype of a professor is that you are a bald head, fat and carrying some yellow paper. Gone were those days, so we had to adopt new teaching methods, change the approach of how we do things, adopt experiential learning, program-based learning. And this was taught at university level using resources within the university, of course, support from the EU partner. So for me, my target bet with the universities in Ethiopia is that, yeah, make your curriculum international, but also train your staff to be better teachers, to deliver the curriculum to a competency-based curriculum. That is the way it's going, and that's where the world is moving. Thank you.
See, I think she's just
Perfect, Catherine. So we have a short break, 20 minutes, then we'll be back for the panel, for the rat. Curriculum design and body concerns, and I would say equalism, lot of relevancy of the curriculum. Let's go back to the question of employability, of course, still applied with the curriculum design and the internationalization. I have a question for Professor Françoise Monassi. He does any jump into whether the concern of the African students at the moment, not only the African students, I would say most of the students at the moment, is employability. But from your perspective, what kind of supportive activities, services could be made available to
African students become more employable?
Yes, it's a good question as always. No, it's a very good question. It's not a question. It's not an issue only for African students. Of course, it's an issue too for European or all the world students. We look at support for employability as a main topic for all universities because mainly they face structural constraints. For example, insufficient funding, a few links with industry, limited internship opportunities, mismatch between curricula and labor market, etc., etc. There is, of course, many constraints. Nevertheless, in African universities, is not a topic I know very well, but well, my African colleagues will help. Nevertheless, in African universities, as in other ones, this support for employability can be more effective when it combines some key factors. I am going to focus on 6 of them. There are more, but I'm going to focus on 6 of them. The first key factor I think it's really important is the integration of employability into academic programs. It's important to introduce support to employability into curricula. We can do it with competency-based programs instead of only knowledge-based ones. But we don't avoid, of course, the knowledge-based one. Industry participation in curriculum design, interdisciplinary or project-based or experiential learning, programs align with labor market needs in a certain way. Research-based learning also supports employability, for example, through applied research projects or innovation labs. It can strengthen analytical thinking, project management, teamwork, or problem-solving capacity. The second key factor is work-integrated learning and entrepreneurship support when, of course, it is possible. One of the most, in my opinion, one of the most impactful employability supports is exposure to real workplaces through internships, apprenticeships, industrial placements, capstone projects with companies, etc. To do that, universities have to sign, of course, agreements with employers, have to integrate internships into curricula, and supervise workplace learning. The benefits for students are real. They gain, of course, practical experience, workplace behavior skills, references, and sometimes recommendations. Of course, strong employer engagement is essential to do that. But because formal employment opportunities may be limited in some contexts, not only in Africa, all around the world, many universities promote entrepreneurship thanks to startup coaching, business incubation, etc. The third key factor is, in my opinion, career guidance. Many universities are strengthening career centers to support students before graduation. For example, through career counseling, CV and cover letter workshops, interview preparation. We do it in France at that. An interview preparation, I sell it, career orientation sessions, labor market information through job fairs and employer networking, mentorship programs or graduate tracking. The objective of this initiative are obvious: help students understand labor markets, expectations, improve also professional self-presentation, reduce mismatch between education and jobs. The fourth key factor could be digital and soft skills. We spoke about them before. We know it well, employability depends on digital competencies such as digital literacy, coding, programming, data analysis, remote collaboration tools, etc. It depends also, and it's very important to tell it, on soft skills such as communication, teamwork, problem solving, adaptability, leadership, intercultural competence, etc. These competences have to be integrated into curricula or awarded by digital badges or certificates or skills portfolios. Many ways to have. And it really helps students develop global competencies, language skills, all languages, of course, language skills and intercultural communication. Of course, the fifth key factor, in my opinion, is essential. I know it could be a problem, but it's essential with the international mobility. International exposure can really improve employability. There are many opportunities, student exchanges, virtual exchanges, as Frederic said before, international internships, regional mobility programs, joint degrees, COIL, was explained by Frederic before, collaborating online international learning. The benefits for students are obvious through these ways. And I conclude with regional and international employability initiatives as the sixth key factor. As far as I know, and I insist on it, as far as I know, several continental and international programs support African graduate employability. It can be completed as well, of course, by my African colleagues in a moment. Among the initiatives, I have found African Union employability programs, TVET modernization projects, technical and vocational education and training. It's a program by UNESCO and European Union. African Centers of Excellence, training of students in key fields in Africa, such as agriculture or health. These international partnerships are supported by the African Development Bank, the European Union, by UNESCO, by the World Bank, by the DAD, that is German Academic Change Service, or by Erasmus+. In conclusion, I want to share with you some emerging good practices, employability integrated into all curricula, technical one, but also in social and humanities, social sciences and humanities, integrated into curricula rather than isolated workshops, competency-based education, digital employability ecosystems with use of online career portals, e-portfolios, virtual internships, and last but not least, regional employability frameworks and alignments with continental priorities, such as Agenda 2063 or African Continental Free Trade Area. I want to thank Ada Peter, who told me about a very useful website called Ribara.co. That is an infrastructure created by Africans to enhance employability across the continent.
Thank you.
I've been.
Also, you gave us an extensive overview of all the tools that can be used for enhancing the employability of African students. Any comments? Any Any remarks from the audience on this support and the services that could be implemented for students' employability in Africa? So, okay, we shall continue with. And echoing just what you said about the relevance of the mobility for students, Mady Bathily, should intra-African mobility be more prioritized before intercontinental mobility?
Votre question est très intéressante. Bonjour à tous. Je vous fais d'abord rappeler le rôle de l'université. L'université, quoi? C'est l'enseignement, la recherche, l'innovation, l'insertion professionnelle des étudiants, les études à la communauté.
The role of university, as let me do this explanation. The role of university is training, research, employability of students, and promotion of research. By the way, valorization of all the activities of the universities.
Donc, on comprend que que c'est l'université pour le développement du pays, mais également pour l'intégration sous-régionale et l'intégration régionale.
And in addition of that, of course, local embedded integration and regional, as for speaking for the African continent, embedded education as well.
Vous comprenez pourquoi la mobilité inter-africaine est une priorité, un enjeu stratégique pour nos universités.
That's why intra-African mobility is both strategic and useful for all the African universities.
La mobilité inter-africaine va permettre aux enseignants, chercheurs et aux étudiants de participer en fait aux problématiques de développement de nos continents, notamment ce qui concerne les questions de l'eau, les questions d'environnement, la transition, les questions d'agriculture, de paix et de sécurité, etc.
And equally what has been said on the relevance of locally embedded education and curricula, only you Africans knows about the concern, the importance of sustainable development of water, what we call the blue resource of your continent, of the One Health questions and issues.
La mobilité interafricaine permet également, en fait, de maintenir le talent, les enseignants-chercheurs, les étudiants, en luttant contre la fuite de cerveau.
And this is an important question to retain talent and to develop the talent of all the African academy, to have this intra-African mobility.
Et nous verrons également qu'il est plus facile de permettre une mobilité interafricaine parce que les questions de bourse, les questions de puissance seront moins présentes.
And this is even more important because, and this is interesting, if I may add in my translation, to have this understanding of the intra-African mobility from the Francophone side of the Africa with Mr. Bathily. It is important whether you're from Francophone Africa, Anglophone Africa, Spanish Africa, or even Portuguese African-speaking country, to have this integrated mobility skill.
Et nous voyons également que cette mobilité, comme je l'avais dit, va permettre en fait l'intégration sous-régionale à travers les espaces. Quand je parle par exemple de l'UMOA, de la CEMAC en Afrique centrale, et également même de l'intégration africaine en réalisant ce qu'on appelle la zone de libre-échange économique africaine. La ZLECA. ZLECA.
ZLECA is the
zone de libre-échange.
Okay, and this is why I was, let's say, from the mostly for the Francophone countries where you part with Ron, there's this goals and this purpose of more integrated, international institution for education. So actually, Mr. Bathily, we present you this afternoon with tomorrow at the check. Yes, we'll present you this afternoon with the student and staff mobility programs existing, within African countries and within the country.
Tout cela également montre que nous devons nous inspirer de ce qui se fait de mieux également dans le monde. Notamment, je prends l'exemple de la mobilité Erasmus en Europe. Je pense qu'on doit s'inspirer de ça pour voir qu'est-ce qu'ils peuvent faire. Et c'est la raison pour laquelle l'Union africaine et l'Union européenne appuient ce programme d'échange interafricain.
And one good illustration of how we can, how the mobility can be developed on the scale of the African continent is this Europe to Africa initiative, or I should say Africa and Europe initiative of this intra-African mobility scheme, which has been developed by the European community, but which will go even further with the support of the African Union to encourage and develop even further the mobility of African students, first of all, inside Africa, within the get.
De l'autre côté, là, on doit comprendre tout le monde que le village planétaire et que le savoir n'a pas de frontières.
Oh, knowledge doesn't have any barriers, any frontiers.
C'est pour voir, en fait, la mobilité intercontinentale a tout son sens.
But at the same time, the intercontinental mobility makes sense. We can both learn from each other. So we can both work on the African scale, we can both learn with Europe, we can both learn the worldwide scale.
Nos anciens chercheurs, nos étudiants, doivent aller dans d'autres continents, en l'Europe, en Asie, en Amérique, pour y bénéficier des infrastructures, des recherches dans le domaine très spécialisé.
So let's keep on exchanging our academics, our students with North America, Europe, and anywhere else in the world to benefit from, other knowledge, other facilities, and to help the African universities be even better in their pedagogy and research.
Et des travaux de recherche ont prouvé que les étudiants chinois, brésiliens de retour ont pu participer au développement de leur pays.
So if we keep with the models of the Chinese and with Brazilian students going abroad, so spending some time away from Brazil or China, of course, when they come back to their country, they contribute to the enhancement and the development of their countries in diverse sectors.
En allant dans d'autres continents, ils bénéficient de ce qu'on appelle en fait des transferts de technologie qui pourront amener en Afrique, transfert de technologie.
It helps in doing technological transfer. I would say intercultural transfer as well.
Une évolution vers le monde en développant des réseaux.
Helps develop networks. This is going to be addressed tomorrow, or the questions of transnational networks inside Africa and with other countries.
En acquérant énormément de compétences professionnelles qui sont dans d'autres continents.
And even acquire, additional professional, business, entrepreneurial competencies that do not exist in your own country or and exist elsewhere.
En conclusion, pour répondre à la question, c'est une priorité, certes, mais elle est complémentaire. La migration intercontinentale est complémentaire à la migration interafricaine.
Okay, that is a good conclusion to say that intra-African mobility is complementary to intercontinental mobility. So we should not oppose the two kinds of mobilities, but it should be complementary. Thank you. Paul, if you don't have any questions or remarks, oh yes, please go. Yeah, please. Adivo,
It's not a question, kind of compliment. Yes, we did in traffic academic mobility scheme, and I also agree that it doesn't contradict with international mobility. But this has been a rhetoric for many African countries, and particularly the government. We have been saying this time and again. But the only commitment that I see is from the European Commission, the project he's been mentioning about the intra-African academic mobility scheme. So most of this within African mobility depends on international contribution. I don't see the African government commitment or universities commitment to ensure intra-African academic mobility within their own funds. So this is a simple rhetoric that doesn't show government and institutions' commitment. It always depends on funds and projects outside the continent. So my question is, how Africa and when do we commit fund for such important academic mobility?
There are a lot of questions that are but is it sport?
C'est pas vite que mettre pour saluer le lien.
No. It seems the complex truth.
Il se dit qu'en fait, on en parle,
Mais ça se fait pas, il n'y a pas les ressources.
il n'y a pas d'eau ressources.
Et les ressources viennent d'ailleurs. Elles ne viennent pas des gouvernements amis.
on voit pas les gouvernements sont 0% ils nous revendent. Je pense que c'est quelque chose de plus
Priorité. C'est tout le problème.
Il appartient, il continue aussi aux États d'accorder la place qu'il faut également à la politique. Un État, je prends l'exemple d'accords qui sont souvent signés entre États pour permettre cette mobilité. Ça, c'est mon premier aspect. Le second aspect également, c'est que l'université doit mettre les sous faux. De sous faux.
Mais c'est les gouvernements.
Les sous faux, c'est éviter également ce qu'on appelle en fait pour la fuite des cerveaux. Je pense que cela également, il faut augmenter les salaires. Il y a tout cela qui peut permettre la mobilité.
What else can we answer that? If it's not a priority for your government, if it's not a priority for your university, who's gonna do it? So you have to address, I don't know, your representative of your ministry as usual, or...
But I think the priority of the university come to work if there is no fund from the government.
Is a question of funding. My question to you will be, yes, regarding to you and to you all. Yes. How can you address your government, your institution, to put funds on the table for that? And my other question will be, just take a difference at the end of the day if you get funding from the European Union, which in fact you could say it's Western oriented, but it's not in the interest, the direct interest of any European universities, this intra-African mobility scheme. This is completely in the hands of the African institution. So does it make a difference? Once again, at the end of the day, the money comes from Europe. And if the money came from China or even India or let's say Brazil, which had some mobility and that mobility with the Portuguese and the Portuguese-speaking country, Mozambique, Angola. So I'm asking you this question.
May I?
Sure.
Yeah. So I'm appreciative of the European Commission contribution, but don't forget it's a project. It has its lifetime. It would end at some point. But if there is an initiative from African government, like the ministries, the institutions, then we can ensure sustainability of academic mobility, regardless of whether there's a project coming from Europe, US, or whatever. So we cannot ensure sustainability, and we cannot forever depend on project funds. So if we internalize or make it institutionalized, that if AU, my university, dedicates a certain amount of its budget for academic mobility, student academic mobility, then if we get a fund from external sources, that's a class. But if, for instance, Europe says that, okay, now it's 2020, we are not going to fund intra-Africa academic mobility. It may happen sometimes. Then what will happen to the intra-Africa academic mobility scheme in Africa? Because institutions and governments are not ready and they don't have the budget to commit. For instance, I don't see any Ethiopian public university having a dedicated budget for mobility, unless it is tied to a certain project. It would be World Bank Center of Excellence or EU or something. So we cannot ensure sustainability of such a very good academic trend without having our own commitment. That's what my argument is.
No, but you're totally right. But once again,
Let me tell you, I don't see, I'm not in the European Union, of course. I'm not a decisive person, but the point is, but not early 27. You will have a new agreement between the African Union and European Union, for sure. Now, I understand the point of view is be responsible. When you said be responsible, maybe African universities, maybe governments. You have to be responsible, and you have to put forward the fact that you need to have internal funding from your government and institutions. So I see this as a good, positive answer. Please, Mr. Hewitt.
Je pense que hier, au cours du palais, nous avons montré l'importance de la sensibilisation des compétences et capacités que doivent avoir les matchs, que ce soit qu'enseignant ou administratif. À mon avis, c'est très important qu'ils soient sensibilisés pour comprendre l'importance de l'internationalisation. Je pense que si dans les universités, les managers à tous les niveaux comprennent l'enjeu de l'internationalisation, au niveau du ministère également, ceux qui occupent en fait la direction de la préparation de la recherche, à ce niveau également, comprennent, à mon avis, le mode pour être mis pour permettre la monitorisation.
Experimental action is quite answering in your sense, is because what you're saying is saying that if it has to start with sensibilization and just giving first priorities to this internationalization process into African university on the African continent. This is the first step. Then the second step will be the governments of your institution, and even I would say you governments or your countries, to tackle the issue of mobility and fundings of mobility. So once again, I shall say, from my point of view, from my side, it's up to you to make this you need to see going forward. And to echo what Peter said this morning, take control of yourself, take control of your curriculum, take control of what you want to do, what are your objectives, the purposes, the objective, the activity that you want to put in place inside your institutions. And I perfectly understand that up to some point, you want to have less and less money outside from outside institution, not to be under control by that. But it starts with this, tackling the issues and being in control of your curriculum, your services, your policy of internationalization. I would look at this way a bit. No, just this, sir. You have to pocket that. Just take this, sir, please. Then I will go back to Kiz, not sure.
Fait sauter le café tout à l'heure. Défendage.
Thank you so much for our speakers. My name is Ronde. I'm from Ethiopian Mineral Corporation. I want to know that France University experience in relation to the university industry decade. What are the strengths and what are the challenges? Because the universities are the center for the center for innovation and creativity. Students will have innovation and the creativity from university. They can be employed by privately or by self-employment, or they can also work in different public institutions. So in this regard, how the industry and the university are working together? Because I thought that probably the industry is probably span B, solve with my human birth. Because industries have many problems regarding the technically. So how they are working together and how are they solving problems? Because it could be an experience for many universities in our country. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes. In France, I speak about Gratagno method, In France, the links between universities and industry were very difficult during years. But I think it's the links today are very strong. One what? 25% of our diplomas in France are professional, more or less. It depends on the universities. And we have developed apprenticeships in the secondary school, but in the university too, internships. All our students have internships in industry or in other fields of labor market, of course. It's an obligation. It's a decision of the government, and the universities today are very engaged in the professionalization of training, of education.
May I add that it's part of the curriculum. So to have an internship or at least or even an apprenticeship in a company, and it's part of the curriculum in law. It's not just business administration or economic study. It can be law, it can be social studies, humanities, where you need to have like a semester or half a semester that you spend into a company. Of course, in relation with your scope of studies, but your field of studies. But it's now mandatory to do that. And as Françoise Monassi say, it has definitely improved the linkage between the universities and the economic sectors. And we may say that it has improved the understanding of the entrepreneurs, the businesses, toward the university. How the university does work, what are the constraints, and what are the improvements that can be made between the university and the business sectors. Any other comments? Okay, yes. David talked. Sorry, I will take the first this sir, and then yes, this yeah.
Thank you, and thank you for the panelists. My question is on student employability. In Ethiopia, student employability is affected by policy. When there is a change in policy, it's also affected by students' choice on academic programs, which is in turn affected by the policy itself. Then 25-30 years back in Ethiopia, more employability was on social sciences. Students prefer to join finance and economics and banking and ethics because there was this privatization and related things. And their first choice was social science, and after some time, the policy changed. This 70-30 policy, 70% natural. And this affected launching of engineering programs and many things, and the students immediately shifted to join engineering programs. And within the 70-30s, I think 40% was on engineering. And later on, a high rate of unemployment came in the engineering area. And higher demand is appeared from the social science. So now also, because of the emerging technologies, our students are
joining mostly in computer science, AI, ICT, and related topics. And we can imagine how their planability will be after a few years. So my question is, who should manage this issue? I think in Ethiopia we don't have an organization or an entity who manages the student selection and then the employability and the postgraduates and things like that, and even the labor market. So what is the experience maybe from Europe or from France in terms of managing the policy, market, labor, student choice, and employability cycle? Thank you.
I want to point out you.
I think the student's choice is essential, of course, but it exists orientation sessions. They are very useful for helping making others' choice. If it's
You may have one answer, some answers to your questions. If you attend the breakout session of Reframing this afternoon on curriculum development and accreditation, let me tell you the full name of the breakout session. It's facilitate national and international recognition of diplomas and how the states can play a role, not only in accreditation and recognition of diploma, but as well in helping universities to locally define their needs in terms of Europe. So this is my advertising part for this afternoon, for this afternoon session. Another questions? Please, and then we'll move to.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just concerned because the professor rose one important question. We should focus, because if we are here, we should properly cut the pattern of the problem, you see. The pattern of the problem is the African Union, let me say. We don't hinker to each country of Africa because the big elephant umbrella is here in Absar. Therefore, part of the word very important, Professor Ababaros, is rhetoric. Which one is more rhetoric than South-South cooperation? Therefore, each African students are running for you, included myself, because we need that kind of exigency. Otherwise, each country can suggest what it can suggest, could advance what it could advance. Like in the name of collective African Union, is there an agenda of mobility? Is that peak of his world now? And if we don't work for the young Africans, from the African Union office, what is the role of the African Union? This is what I feel. Second, really, because we have been working as a university level with several African universities, Ghana, for example, Kigali, Rwanda, Makerere, Kenya, etc. So many professors, so many students are coming together under all means. Even when we were classmates somewhere, we come each other and we do something at individual level. Therefore, the story of South-South cooperation is an agenda to resolve this type of mobility. The second is assignment for the African Union.
Thank you. I'm taking as a remark.
Yeah. As a remark, and he should know if he's not speaking in French, he should explain it.
Okay, yes.
Now.
Donc, monsieur disait que Reframing, c'est... C'est que lui, on a et que tant que l'Union africaine ne se saisira pas de l'IEP, ça restera de la réussite, restera avec eux.
Je conclue. Merci. 5 minutes pour repartir.
Once again, this afternoon, Catherine Kulandiaya will take on the issues to give you some start of an answer on the internationalization of research, promoting South and regional cooperation. So she might give you some answer on how to develop and maybe to set up international cooperation between
the global equality within the global south. Maybe. Yes, shit. You have other questions of this? We'll start from this point. Yeah? Go ahead.
Okay, thank you for Jeta as well to the panelists. So I would like actually to get more information what we have actually discussed now, because it's very important, and also even though the questions are very, very key questions, but are not really treated very well. So I would like, for example, what are the major challenges and proven best practice of internationalization of European higher education. This could be very useful for us as sharing of experiences. I would like to know more about that. And the second question is, for example, we sure they are in the slides, the curriculum design and the students' employability. So here there is a staff and the students' mobility. So how it works in the European level, the students' mobility, the staff and the student mobility in reality. And I would like to have more information on that. Thank you.
Okay, so you're going to mainly advertise all of the breakout sessions of today's afternoon. You will be even simple on concrete solutions to find solutions. So the first round of breakout sessions, I wouldn't have to do that at 2 o'clock. That's perfect. So the first round of breakout sessions starting at 1:40. You will have do you get the agenda, sir? For me, the agenda before you is 150. Because 201, you have international studies, local authority. This is the speaker will be Adam Peter. This is designing globally relevant African curricula. Then you have 202, employability without dependence, matching labor market relevance with academic autonomy. And I'm sure that François Bonacivil and Frédéric Ferry will present you with the European insight on the European initiatives in terms of employability. And session number 203, this is student and staff mobility programs, targeted outcomes, skills, and capacity building. It will be led by Mady. I can go on, and after the break, you will have 204. This is ranking matrix color, who controls academic narratives, and how the rankings can be already help for African countries and institutions. 205, this is curriculum development and accreditation. I already mentioned it. The speaker will be Françoise Pocky. And finally, I already mentioned it. This is internationalization of research, promoting South-South and regional cooperation. And this will be animated by Catherine Kunangaya. So I guess you will have, we'll try to tackle all the issues regarding curriculum design and students' employability. Now, if you still have some maybe more concise and questions to our panelists, we can still take questions. You have another questions? Yes? Yes, sir?
Thank you for the chance. And I'm Abita from Mermaid University. Now my question is regarding employability. It is, we know Ethiopia is facing some problems with quality of education and the shortage of teachers. So the quality of education can be maintained if competent features are employed in the education sector. Nowadays, graduates who are being employed in the education sector are not competent because of low salary scale and the form. Therefore, even nowadays, Ethiopia is facing shortage of teachers because of about 100,000 teacher capacity is in place now. So the education sector is a social service. So how such problems are addressed in Europe countries and in Africa in general? This is my question.
Thank you. Just before one of our catalysts answered, let me tell you that the UNESCO has said that by the year 2030, the world will lack 75 million teachers from basic education to higher education. So I understand our concern at the level of Ethiopia, but as you mentioned, concern even for the worldwide. What kind of answer can we give?
It's a very interesting topic, but it's question, but it's at the same time, and as adapters explained, we are in a paradox. It's impossible for the international community to be done for too long time, and to make a compensation of the situation of the state, because if we enter that, we enter the dependence. We have talked about that for data control yesterday with Ada, and it's the same for everything. So, and it's not a special situation for Ethiopia. There is a lot of country, even in the north, where some of the teachers are really bad. Not only the salary, but the status, the social status. Perhaps because of the sound also, but not only. Because the knowledge has changed. Who controls the knowledge? The teacher don't control the knowledge anymore. You can find the knowledge in your smartphone. And sometimes more, with your teacher. So this situation, it's really complex, because if we are just waiting for somebody to help, we enter the dependent situation. So as for the mobility, the student mobility, it's a question of choice. One day, government has to make the choice priority of education. It's an investment for the future. So, of course, some of our countries has a lot of priorities. This is a problem. So we have to choose several priorities, and we have not enough resources. It's not a special situation for Egypt. It's a situation for a lot of countries, and in the north. Interest will lack teachers. But we have a diminution of demography. So there is something like a compensatory for the basic education. But we are in a situation where we miss also sometimes some political choice to change the status of the teacher, to put more money on that. If we don't do that, we know what will happen and what happened in Africa in particular. This is a private sector. And the private sector take the control of the parts of higher education, for example, and it's only the student who has the money, the family who has the money, going to follow. And then there is a double system, the public system and the others. We know that. So it's a very difficult, there is no easy answer. It's at the same time, it's a choice, a political choice for the future. And it depends on each country, each government,
each society making their own choice. And at the same time, it's very difficult because we know that there is a lot of priorities.
Yeah, and that is only ready to need a solution. I just want to help that training of teachers remains essential. It's a very difficult issue. In France, we have known a lot of reforms of the training of teachers. One is in course this year. And I won't say that the quality of education is totally linked to that. But yes, more or less. Yes, there is a link, not a total link.
You will, last question, just before. So, okay, I have a last question then. I have a last question to Stéphane Lopez. It's not going to be an intrusive question, the way I'm going to ask it to you. It's more to share expertise and experience with our participants. How can African universities internationalize in ways that preserve cultural relevance and intellectual independence? And this question, I asked it so because this is exactly the question that the French people will tackle in this regard. Speaking of cultural relevance and intellectual independence, let me say that this is what we have been doing since the end of World War II. So I will let you answer.
Thank you. Well, this question is not so far. This question is not so far removed from the work I answered yesterday was local and connection with local and international. Why? Because taking into account the unique cultural characteristic of the continent, African continent, it is all diversity because each country is different. There is no one Africa. It's, of course, you know that better than me. But means introducing alongside the international contextual and local. So we go back to the local issue. Or we can keep in mind the articulation between international and local. At this time, with a cultural issue. Added to this is a question of independence, we just how important that. Which we discussed also yesterday. I was explaining that with the data control. Who control the data, who control the curricula, who control the manuals, who control everything. Who control the funds, what direction, but orientation. So the fact is that one is much more independent when one develops work in accordance with his own identity. So you can't forget that. Because now there is something like we're after internationalization, and sometimes we forgot that. Well, we have an identity. We are not a global people. We have an identity, we have a mystery, we have a cultural heritage. So, to be really close to operational solution, not just having a narrative, general narrative. We know that some African universities are managed to have those connection between international education and local perspective, so cultural, taking cultural matters in consideration in the curriculum. First, I think it's really important to advocate for national and institutional policy. Because you're a president of university, he has some contact with his ministry. So if his ministry knows countries, perhaps, he could also be something like an advocate for this cause. It's something important. A president of university has a social role, not only hierarchic, I don't do. So we could develop curricula, and some university does, that incorporate indigenous knowledge system in the local language. We have spoken about that this morning. Cultural practice, and that alongside global perspectives. We could also find some partner and be a partner as a university with local communities. I remarked that yesterday also. We have also the possibility to also in partnership with skate doctors to design programs that reflect both global standard and local needs, and amongst those local needs. There is the cultural heritage, the cultural perspectives of people. But we also, as an university, encourage research. This gentleman has reminded us that now there is a tendency of choosing sides and followed the social sides. So there is a responsibility, also a social responsibility, to encourage research. Not only encourage research, but encourage publication of the research to get a quotas. That's really a concrete way of dealing with the articulation of cultural heritage, cultural perspective, cultural identity, and at the same time, the international ace. Now, and some of the gentlemen begin to touch at this matter. Yesterday, Kache was making reference to an image, the elephant in the room. I will enlarge the scale. There is something like a dinosaur in the corridor. And we are here in Ethiopia. I know they found some sauropod somewhere in your country. This dinosaur is the choice of each family and the choice of each student. At the end, university can do what they want, but the choice is the choice of the family and the choice of the students. So there is something like an hypocrisy, and sometimes it's a schizophrenia. When people are with friends and in their family, talk of identity, of their country, of their people, of their ethnic, they talk of their language, and then when they consider their individual situation and their future, they make another choice. And they make the choice perhaps to go in a foreign country. And in that foreign country, it's almost true that nobody will talk about their cultural heritage. So at what moment also there is a question of choice. If we want to be independent, if we want to keep our identity, we have to make a choice. And this choice is linked with certainly individual intelligence, but also with collective intelligence. And we have to consider things not only from our future point of view, what are you going to begin, but what we begin my country, what's this country going to be in 20 years if everybody goes like that? Going to the States, going to Germany, going to France, to Adulto, and just following his identity and talking of identity with his friend, with his family. But then, in this choice, I don't see any identity choice.
Something like a chosen servitude.
I choose, I renounce, I forgot my identity. And thus, it's very difficult because university can't manage that. They are just answering the demand. So if the demand is for a model, they offer for a model. Because if they offer something else, it's a market. And moreover, it's a market. So if the product is not conform to the demand, well, the university is selling something nobody will buy. This is a reality. It's cruel, but it's reality. So at the same time, we can resolve all the problem. There is also an individual responsibility. Me as a director of the education cooperation for France, for the French Minister of Education, like here, it's not the French Minister of Education, it's the foreign minister, the French foreign. But sometimes I'm working for a lot of different administrations. I used to think, perhaps not every morning, but perhaps 1 or 2 times a week when I began a cooperation. Or I gonna begin that cooperation? Will I increase the dependence of the country, of the university, of the school? Or will I increase its autonomy with what I carry, with what I bring, with my team? Here, it's that seminar, it's that conference. Shall we bring some more dependence with some Occidental model, North model, I don't know? Or shall we bring more autonomy? That is a question for everybody. For donors, for actors, cooperation actors. But this is a question of how you just watch out your role and you watch it to your social responsibility. As the French director of the cooperation in the education, I had a social responsibility. What will I give you? What will I bring you? Increasing the dependence or increasing the autonomy? And each student has also a social dependence. Will he increase the dependence of his country? Or will he increase the autonomy of his country? This is a real issue.
Thank you. I guess right now we try to increase the debate between you, yourself, with us, with only the past. It's about time to close this roundtable. Thank you very much for your victory.